Welcome to this Tutor and TA collaboration session for high needs learners, the first of the 2023-24 academic year. To remind, we hold these the week before STAR Weeks when progress reviews are held, so that today's discussions are fresh in the minds of personal tutors when they come to update these learners' ILPs. As you are hopefully well aware by now, high needs learners are those learners who have an education, health and care plan to meet their complex additional needs and for whom we have planned to deliver more than £6,000 worth of support within the academic year, which is roughly 6 hours per week or more of in-class support from a teaching assistant or a communication support worker. This year at Southern City College Birmingham, we have 149 high needs learners, 84 in foundation and a further 65 cross-college. You've been invited to this collaborative workshop because you teach or you support one of these 149 learners. If you were involved in these sessions last year, then the structure and purpose are not wildly different this time around, but the stakes are that little bit higher because we expect to be inspected this year. And from that Ofsted team, there'll be one inspector exclusively focused on these 149 young people. In the recent High Needs mock deep dive, we were able to demonstrate some progress from where we were a year ago, and lots of good quality teaching and support was observed, but some familiar themes were picked up for improvement, and now we're in the end zone, where any last minute changes we need to make can't be put off any longer. We have 3 objectives for today's session. First, understanding and using the support plan. 2, discussing learner progress towards EHCP preparation for adulthood, or I'll keep saying PFA outcomes, and checking that we have smart targets based on them ready for the ILP to be updated. And thirdly, looking ahead to planned learning in the schemes of work and making sure the schemes of work make reference to the high needs learners and their support. Today's paperwork is similar to that we used last year, starting with an activity based around a joint tutor and TA review of the support plan. The ALS team are going to do some extra work on the support plans in coming weeks, aimed at making them have a bit more of a consistent house style and hopefully make them even easier to use. However, the content there now should already be high quality, so please do look together at the current version and have those conversations about what things the tutor can do and what things the teaching assistant or communication support worker can do to put the support strategies and differentiation into place. What we found in the deep dive was an improvement in awareness about support plans, but still too many cases where they weren't being used. In fact, it was impressive when commented upon when the inspector did clock a tutor using strategies from the support plan. The second activity is likely to take a big chunk of the time we have this afternoon, and it's about making sure that the targets in these learners' ILPs reflect their EHCP outcomes the way they should. The truth is, we're not quite where we need to be with the high needs ILPs. In today's session, we need to look together at the ILPs, evaluate how close they are to what is needed, and either fix them up or leave a really good set of notes on today's paperwork so that it's not too big a job for the personal tutor to implement any changes needed in the next week. High needs learners in foundation continue to use the paper-based ILP, while those in other faculties should be using the new EBS EHCP ILP, for which we'll reshare some instructions for how to navigate the system, explaining which bit goes where and what buttons to press to save it correctly, etc. I'm going to go back to basics in a minute and remind everyone about what this whole preparation for adulthood business is about to make sure we're all 100% clear. But while we're looking at this excerpt from this session's paperwork, the task you're being asked to work together on is to access the ILP, look at the PFA outcomes that the ALS team will already have put in there, check that there are related SMART targets under each of the 4 PFA headings and create one for each if not. If there is one already, give some thought to if it's truly SMART and whether it can be improved. Have a chat about what progress the learner is making in this area ready for their one-to-ones. And finally, think about how we're going to support the learner to achieve the target, including which college staff or college teams may need to be involved, and for that matter, who else might need to be involved, possibly to include the parents, and how and when feedback or evidence is going to be collected. The situation we've got right now with high needs ILPs varies considerably. We have some ILPs looking pretty good, but for the most part, one of the following applies. The ILP has not really been started, or there are targets there, but they aren't SMART targets, or there are targets there, but they have nothing to do with the essential 4 PFA headings, or there are targets there, but they're inputted in the wrong section of the ILP, or even if the rest of it looks quite good, it's lacking any explanation of how we will support the learner to achieve the targets. The good news is that these are all things we can fix. I know we have many very experienced and knowledgeable staff in this session, so forgive me for covering some ground you may already be familiar with. EHCPs are long, often dense documents that contain masses of highly sensitive information, but as the educational setting named in the EHCP, we're ultimately judged by learners' progress towards outcomes listed in section E. The outcomes are statements about what the learner should be encouraged, facilitated and monitored to achieve. Sometimes these are split into short term, roughly meaning that academic year, and long term, meaning by the end of their educational journey. They get updated annually at an EHCP review, which means for some of our learners they were last set at school. If the ALS team have clocked that they are wildly out of date, we may have put a provisional updated outcome into the ILP. They are set out under 4 Preparation for Adulthood PFA headings: Learning and Employment, Towards Independence, Friendships and Community, and Keeping Healthy. Learning and Employment. This is the most normal, if you like, of the PFA headings, where learners may well have outcomes about passing courses, about finding progression routes, and about gaining skills and information to help them in their career. Not all EHCP outcomes are brilliantly written, not all are bang up to date, but under learning and employment we ought to be able to recontextualise whatever's there for our setting. On the slide you'll notice that in these examples it's not too hard to make SMART targets. Think about what can be achieved in a defined period of time and how success will be measured. Remember to be ambitious for all learners. Don't set the minimum standard. We want to appropriately stretch these young people. For those tutors who have already done a fabulous job of writing SMART targets linked to the PFA outcomes, kudos to you, but please pay attention to the column on the right where I've given an idea of how we need to indicate just how we will support the learner to achieve the target. In the EBS EHCP ILP, these details need to be added to the target comments box. If you're at all worried that I'm whizzing through, these examples will be available as a handout. Outcomes under the Towards Independence heading will be very different for some of our entry-level learners in Foundation than those for a Level 3 learner elsewhere. The outcomes may well cover topics like managing money that we're actually quite used to addressing in the tutorial programme, but not so used to monitoring and measuring progress for. In the examples on the slide, I again want to draw attention to the column on the right and the fact that in some cases the progress won't all be made at college, and help from family may need to be sought to support some of the activity and to report back on how that learner has got on. In the third example, about independent travel, you'll see that the ALS team were the ones with the contacts and the know-how to put the support in place. So this afternoon is a great opportunity to think which things can be supported by tutors, what things can be supported by teaching assistants, what can be supported by other services in student engagement, and make sure all of that makes its way into the paperwork so that ultimately it can be put into the ILP. Under this third PFA outcomes heading of friendships and community, we can clearly see that the college enrichment offer could be significant, but equally it could again be a call to mom to see if your learner could be encouraged and supported from home to take part in community events or festivals, or to take back up that sport that they used to really enjoy before they dropped out of it. Have a look at the third example, where there is an outcome about civic understanding. Let's be smart. Where we already have the right topic in the tutorial programme, let's make sure that we evidence that they took part in that session. Or where we have a guest speaker option offered by student engagement on the right topic, let's make sure that the learner attends and that we can evidence their learning and progress. Finally then, the Keeping Healthy heading. These can be tough to make truly SMART targets from, and I haven't quite managed it in a couple of these examples here. But I have been specific about how we can support the target and how we can measure their success, so they haven't remained too vague or wishy-washy. As a brief recap before we move on, this afternoon you'll already have looked at the support plan and then you'll look together at the ILP. For foundation learners, you'll find the ILP in your team's channels. For cross-college learners, we'll support you to open the page that has the EHCP ILP in EBS, and we'll get the EHCP outcomes on one tab, and then we'll get the ILP targets on another, so it's hopefully easy to switch between the two. If you're the personal tutor and it's easy to make some useful edits then and there, great. But if not, the tutor and the TA can use the paperwork provided for this session to take notes for the personal tutor so that they can update the ILP easily in the week. As the third activity, we're asking you to review your schemes of work so that tutors and teaching assistants are clear on what's coming up and have a chance to talk it all through, cross-reference to the support plan and be clear on how teaching will be differentiated and how teaching assistants and communication support workers will support these learning activities in the classroom. As a task for tutors to take away, we've been given very clear guidance that the scheme of work needs to explicitly reference the high needs learners in the group and how tutors and TAs will meet their needs. Again, please use today's paperwork to take any notes to make it easy to update the scheme of work if they haven't yet got this level of detail already. One last thing. There's a lot to do, so I don't want to waste too much more of your time on this video, but there is one final bit of feedback from our recent High Needs deep dive that we need to share with teaching assistants and tutors so that we stand the best chance of success at inspection. The inspector will expect to see clear communication between the tutor and the TA at the start and at the end of the lesson, and if they don't catch it live in person, they're very likely to ask the tutor or the TA about it. Start of the lesson. They expect to see the tutor briefing the TA on the lesson objectives with some brief professional discussion about how you will work together to deliver the differentiation and support. And then at the end of the lesson, they will want to see that there's a debrief to include what progress each of the supported learners have made against the lesson objectives, and also what went well or what could be improved in supporting them in the next lesson. I've been absolutely assured they do not expect to see a 10-minute meeting with minutes taken at each end of the lesson. They really can be brief and casual, but they must happen. Plus, of course, they'll want to see all the things we're working on today, which I've just put some reminders on back on screen. I hope you have a productive session, and remember, if you're being held back by any problems such as, I don't know, navigating the EBS EHCP ILP, or if you're stuck on how to address one of the EHCP outcomes, just ask for help from the ALS team and we'll do our level best to support. Thanks and have a great afternoon.